Okay, everybody, it's 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I'm excited to get started with part 2 of the first of the 2020 Insight Series presentations called Creating Your Green Home, part 2. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's great to have you all with us. We have the faces of some familiar people here with us as well. We have Gary Cade, who's going to join us later in the presentation, who's our green building consultant. Hello, Gary.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here.
We have Chloe Ferrari, who is our event manager tonight. So she's driving the bus from the mothership. Great to have you with us, Chloe.
Great to be here.
And we also have Kimberly Hayner from the Architectural Resource Team, and she's going to be joining us in the breakout rooms. And so we've got a lot to go through tonight. We've got 20 minutes of insights and inspirations and 20 minutes of conversation with you. So let's get started, and thanks so much for attending. So first and foremost, this again is the first of a 4-event series called the Bowtie Chats. We are in event 1, which is called Creating Your Green Home. We have a second event coming up called Creating Your Beautiful Home. We have a third event called Creating Your Not Too Big Home. And then the fourth and final perennial favorite, Creating Your Energy-Free Home, which is really what we're up to these days at Architectural Resource. So just a little bit of background for what we're going to be doing tonight. The first 20 minutes, again, is the sharing of insights and knowledge. The second 20 minutes is breakout room for open forum discussion, and you will be automatically moved to a breakout room depending on what you indicated as your interest in attending when you register. And just noting that all attendees are going to be muted until the breakout room. So any thoughts, questions, ideas you want to chat with us, jot them down, hold on to them, and then we'll have a chance to speak with you directly. So this first presentation is called Creating Your Green Home. You want to be careful because there's many folks out there who assume they know how to do green. Yeah, lady, I can do a green home for you, and they give you this, and then that is what it looks like through the eyes of an infrared camera. But wait, it gets better. This is what it looks like when winter finally arrives here. So you want to be careful for greenwashing, which is going on quite a bit. And the idea of these presentations is to educate you so you know the right questions to ask to make sure you're getting the goods. So when we talk about a green home, sustainable homes, there's something called the triple bottom line. That's the 3 Ps, and that is people, profit, and planet. Done correctly, a sustainable home addresses all 3 of those in equal measure. That's when it's going to work, is when it works for all 3 of those corners of the triangle. This is a definition of a green home taken from the United States Green Building Council, and what we like about it is it's broad and it really goes to what we're about, which is lessening the negative impact of your home on the environment and those who live inside. So we look at 7 fundamentals of green homes. We had addressed already the first 4 with part 1, which if you didn't have a chance to view it, is available at our Architectural Resource YouTube channel, Process, Location, Site, and Water. And in this presentation, we're going to be focusing on energy, materials, and indoor environment. So let's get rolling. Energy. The steps to a energy efficient home are the same for any project, whether they're going for net zero or just a pretty good home. And that's conservation, utilization, and generation, and in that order. The rule of 3 of energy management has you focusing first on the conservation piece. Once we get that in place, we then move on to look at the utilization piece. And then the final piece is the generation component. So conservation means losing as little energy as you can. So if you think about it, if your house is a vessel and the water in the vessel is the energy in your house, it just makes good sense that the first step we want to take is to make sure that we're losing as little energy as possible. And how we do that is by focusing on something that we call the third skin, or the building envelope. That's what separates you from the exterior environment. There are a myriad of different leakage paths that are part of the concern of what we call convective energy loss. This is a very significant and important piece of the performance of a home. And it's something that many people don't look at. They think the first thing they're going to do is add insulation. Actually, the first thing you're going to do is address the air leakiness of your house. Once you've addressed the air leakiness and conservation, so you're losing as little energy as you can, we then move into the second step. The second step is utilization, using as little energy as you possibly can. How you do that is you make sure that you specify equipment, things that are going to generate the heating and cooling from your space, the hot water, and all of the other needs you have, your appliances and whatnot. And we're going to talk about that in high-level flyover. But at a minimum, making sure that you are specifying Energy Star appliances. We think about heating and cooling, and one of the things that comes to mind is something called a ground source heat pump. You might know it as a geothermal heating and cooling system. It's considered a sustainable energy approach to heating and cooling a home, because rather than relying on the energy input to generate the heating and cooling for your home, it relies on the existing steady state temperature of the earth beneath your feet at 55 degrees year round. That is 75% of the heat, 25% goes in to run the compressor, and so we have what's called a coefficient of performance of 4. So we essentially have, if you know about your furnace and you say, I have a high efficiency furnace, it's a 95 or a 98%, this is actually 400% efficient. And that's why we looked at geothermal as the type of heating and cooling that we'd like to introduce for a high performance home. And these are showing the geo lines coming in and going out. And why it's exciting for us is that it also moves us away to combustion to what we're focusing on, which is an all electric home. Then we start thinking, of course, once we have the space heating and cooling underhand, we then move to the domestic hot water. And one of the units that we like to specify is what's called an air source heat pump, air to water. A geothermal is a ground source heat pump. An air source heat pump uses ambient heat energy from the air and then uses that to create the hot water for the domestic use. Once we look at that, then we start thinking about how the hot water is delivered. And we talk about something called structured plumbing. This is where the water is routed to the end fixture and then brought back to the water heater through a recirculating pump, which allows us to avoid sending the gallons of water down the sink as we're waiting for the hot water to arrive at the sink. And these pumps can be timered, they can be motion activated, they can be pressure sensitive remote control button activated. And this is a way that we can reduce the amount of water that we're sending down the drain while we're waiting for hot water to get there. But the usual big pushback we get when we're talking to someone about an all electric home is gas, because I'm cooking with gas. Well, guess what? There is something called an induction range, which works similar to a microwave, where a microwave would heat the water molecules. An induction range heats the iron molecules in your pot. And so what happens is the pot gets hot, not the surface. What's exciting about this is so efficient. It's 80% energy going into the food as opposed to only 40% with a gas range. So with a gas range, 60% of that heat energy is actually going into your space. So this is something that we're really excited about, and everyone who's ever invested in an induction range has found out, like, my gosh, we love it because we have rapid boiling, we have great control, we can instantly turn it off. It's also safer for children because the surface doesn't get hot, just the pot. Once we've tackled conservation and we've tackled utilization, we move to the last piece of the puzzle, and that's generation. This is interesting because many times people go to generation first. They think, you know, I want to do a green home, I want to put some solar panels on my roof. There's no doubt that you will be making a green home by putting solar panels on your roof because you will use current energy of the sun to generate your power. But what we want to do is reduce the amount of energy that's required through the conservation and utilization focus. Then you can put as small a solar panel on your roof as possible. When we think about solar, there are basically 5 different types of energy that are generated through solar. Solar electric, solar thermal, passive thermal, wind, and wave. All of these are ultimately generated by the sun. The reason we like the sun is if we go to the sun, that's like cutting out the middleman. That's the actual ultimate source of all the energy. And guess what? The sun doesn't send a bill. So if we can use passive solar as an opportunity to heat our houses and cool our houses, we can win. This is from last year, January 31st. Any of you who are from Michigan will remember we were undergoing something called the polar vortex. Very exciting, minus 16 degrees at night. So we had done some passive heating strategies on a house that we built in Ann Arbor called Burbeck at Beacon Springs. It happens to be the second Living Building Challenge project in the entire world. Only 2 residents have achieved that. This is the second. And I'll never forget, but it was later on in the afternoon on that same day on January 31st, and our client sent us this picture. If you notice, the window is open. It was, at that time, minus 6 degrees outside. It was 72 degrees inside, and the mechanical system was off. This is what passive energy can get, is a house that they actually had to open the window. It was getting a little warm. So when the rest of us were huddling down and trying to keep alive, our clients were opening up the window to let in fresh air. This is what can happen with passive energy. And the best part about the passive energy is it doesn't require any moving parts. The next thing we want to talk about is materials. Materials are important for a green home because it has everything to do with the efficiency of materials, the efficiency of the building, and the environmental preferable qualities of those products. Everything that we do in my world is in a 4x8 module. So what we look at is something called optimal value engineering, where we are actually working to use a 4x8 module in modular dimensions for our layouts. We also like to use something called advanced framing techniques. Advanced framing techniques allow us to eliminate 25 to 30% of the lumber. And we can then, in place of that lumber, add additional insulation. And how advanced framing techniques work, it's basically the concept of having continuous load path. So in this case, you're looking at the roof framing using trusses. And if you notice, they're lining directly up with the wall studs beyond. Those loads then come all the way down through the floor framing, all the way down to the foundation. Advanced framing has been around since the 70s. So this is nothing new. It's just smart design strategies. We also like to take a look at using what we call engineered wood products. This uses forest plantation grown wood, FSC certified wood in many cases, and avoids having to cut down old growth forests. Another concept in terms of materials is this idea of reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose. This is a home called the Nautilus House. What's particularly striking about this is all those crazy different windows. Those windows were harvested from builders' backlots where they had windows that were either rejected because the clients didn't like the size, the color, the style, whatever it was. And so at 50 cents on the dollar, we harvested enough windows to do this entire house. And when people say, I can't do green because it's going to cost too much, there's an example of it not costing too much at all, but actually costing less. The last piece we want to take a look at is the indoor environment. Indoor environment has many different aspects, and what we're basically looking at is controlling the inside space that we're living in. That third skin that we talked about, we're looking at what's going on inside that third skin. And these are particularly important now in what we're facing in terms of air quality and air filtration right now. So one of the things we look at is what we call continuous air-to-air recovery ventilation. This is something called an ERV, or an energy recovery ventilator. And what this is it's equivalent to having a window open in your house 24/7, 365, with fresh air coming in, but without the negative impact of losing energy and having humidity track all over the place. And how this works is there's something called an enthalpy core inside. Stale inside air is directed to the outside, fresh outside air is directed to the inside, these two air streams will pass one another, though not touch. And they will have an opportunity to exchange energy and humidity across the core. Why that happens is that allows us to basically keep the same stasis of temperature and humidity level inside and outside, but still have fresh air exchange. So remember that ventilation picture we showed you earlier with all those leakage paths? This is how we ventilate, but we ventilate right. Many people are running around with the notion that a building has to breathe. Well, actually, most of our buildings hyperventilate. So this is an opportunity for us to have our buildings breathe properly. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that's very, very simple. And that is having a way to contaminant control at the transition zone. We oftentimes use airlocks as a way to have contaminant control. But something as simple as taking your shoes off at the door. The LEED for Homes program actually offers points towards LEED certification if you have a spot for you to sit down and have yourself and your guests remove your shoes at the door before you come in. Who knew? My wife was right all this time. So those are some of the strategies that we use to help clients create a green home. In our office, we have 3 steps to creating a green home. The first is exploring visionary design possibilities. The second is unifying from all those different possibilities a cohesive design solution, a unifying master plan. And the third is mapping out the strategic plan of action of how this comes together and how it gets constructed. Imagine a home with no utility bills, where an occupant's health is protected, which is based on recommendation from the nation's best building scientists, built to the highest quality standards with independent verification. A home that's created with advanced construction practices, with a home that is protecting your investment well into the future. That is something you don't have to imagine. That's what we call a green home at Architectural Resource. And we can deliver that to you guys. That's what our passion is. That's what we live for. I'm going to have Gary join us. And hey, there's Gary. Gary's our green building colleague. I'm going to have him spend a little time with us and share some of his insights from his years in the green building industry.
Thank you, Michael, and everyone, thank you for being here this evening. You don't have to imagine this. Safe, energy-free, cost-effective homes, homes of the future are actually here today. Unfortunately, we as builders are pretty slow to innovate, and mostly what's being built today is what I call BNOs. It's kind of a shame, but we're building brand new and obsolete homes. So what I really want to leave you with tonight, if there's one thing to take away from tonight's session, is how important proper planning is. It's the whole key to everything. Planning it properly from the beginning makes all the difference, and it's never too early to get started and put a team, a powerful, effective team behind you to support you along the way. And tonight, we've actually made it easy to get started with taking the right step in the right direction. After the next segment, the open forum, if you'd like to actually schedule some time with Michael, just stay on the call and we can get that done for you. So thank you again. Look forward to talking to you here shortly in the open forum.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, and thank you everyone for attending. And just a reminder that this is the first of 4 different Bowtie Chats that we're having to help give you our knowledge and insights from almost 40 years of doing this work. And you have an opportunity to register for those. They're in the same format as this, rapid fire, 20 minutes of information, 20 minutes of open forum conversation. So we look forward to having you join us in that. And what we're going to do is we have breakout rooms, as we mentioned earlier, so you will be automatically shunted into those breakout rooms, and we'll be ready to carry on the conversation in a more informal dialogue with whatever ideas, questions, thoughts, comments you might have. And as Gary mentioned, our passion is not just talking about this, but actually doing this. And if anyone in this event is interested in having us help you, we can set that up for you immediately after the call. So thank you for joining us, and we're going to have Chloe move us into the break.